We are live.
Okay. The time is 6:01 p.m. We're calling the meeting of April 28th, 2021 meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee to order. At first, I'd like to say I'm substituting tonight for Ed Miller, who could not make tonight's meeting. So we wish him a speedy return at our next meeting. And right now I'd like to turn things over to Fifi, who has a short video Zoom meeting instruction presentation. So Fifi, I'll leave it up to you.
Thank you.
Requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should remute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. A 30-second warning will be provided. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the COVID-19 Special Notice for Public Comment Guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thank you. Fifi, could you please conduct a roll call?
Sure, when I say your name, please let me know you're here. Committee Member Ash,
Here.
Committee Member Bauer,
Here.
Bristow,
Yes, I'm here, Fifi, but I can't get my picture to come on, so, and my name either, so I don't know what to, I'm here though.
Okay, well, we'll update your name and we'll see about your picture in just a bit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bustamante, Hammond,
Here.
Hurley,
Here.
Isola, Leahy,
Present.
Linder, Claire Linder,
Here.
thank you. Mahmood, Zain Mahmood, Moriarty,
Here.
Powells, Bradley Powells, Committee Member Vega,
Here.
Committee Member Yao,
Here.
Vice Chair Rosenberg.
Here.
Thank you. Please note that Committee Member Bustamante, Isola, Mahmood, Powells, and Chair Miller are absent.
Fifi, did you call me, Kent Moriarty?
Yes, I got you.
Okay.
Fifi, I can't get my picture up, so just my name is there.
I see your name. Thank you, Committee Member Vega.
Okay.
I'd like to announce 3 retirements from our committee. Effective May 1st, Committee Member Bustamante from San Pablo, Committee Member Mahmood from Oakley, and committee member Bauer from Pleasant Hill will be retiring from our committee. This is their last meeting tonight. And I just want to say, we want to thank, on behalf of the staff and our committee, thank you for your service to Contra Costa County and your contributions during your period of time on the committee. You will be missed. In addition to these upcoming vacancies in Oakley, Pleasant Hill, and San Pablo, we also have vacancies open in Antioch, Brentwood, Pittsburgh, and Richmond. So if any of you know or have friends or know of people who might be interested in being on the committee, let them know we have these openings and they can follow up with their city hall for an appointment if that's the issue. The next item on our agenda is public comment. Fifi, have we received any public comments?
I have not received any public comment cards via email, but I do see one hand up. And I'm going to ask the individual to unmute themselves.
And this is for items not on the agenda.
Would you go ahead if you would like to make some comments, please?
Martha, please.
Is 239 on the agenda?
Yes, it is.
Then I'll wait.
Okay, sure. Thank you. If there anyone else wishing to speak during this public comment period on any item that is not, as Matt said, not part of the agenda, if so, raise your hand and staff will call upon you. Not seeing anyone. We haven't received any comments, I guess, Fifi, for that?
No, we have not.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the approval of summary of actions from the March 24, 2021 meeting. First of all, are there any changes to be made to it or any comments any committee members might have? Or anyone else from the public would like to speak? Just raise your hand. Any comments from our committee members? From the public? If there is no further discussion, do I have a motion and a second for the approval of the summary of actions? Can I have a motion, please?
I will like to make a motion to approve.
Okay, thank you, Yolanda.
Second.
And a second, please.
I will second it.
Thank you. Fifi, could you please conduct a roll call, please?
Thank you. Committee member Ash, how do you vote?
Aye.
Bauer,
Aye.
Bristow,
Aye.
Hammond,
Aye.
Hurley,
Abstain.
Leahy,
Aye.
Linder,
Aye.
Moriarty,
Aye.
Vega,
Aye.
Yao,
Aye.
Vice Chair Rosenberg.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously by majority present with committee member Hurley abstaining.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the consent calendar. The items are informational and consist of the committee's attendance log and upcoming authority meetings schedule. Are there any comments from the committee members on this subject? Is anyone from the public wish to speak on this issue? Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda is the update on State Route 239 project by Stephanie Hu, who's the Director of Projects. Stephanie, shall I just turn this over to you at this point?
Sure. And I'm going to share screen if you allow me
Thank you.
1 second to make this work, hopefully. Be great if you guys can let me know you're seeing the slides in full screen.
Mhm.
Yep, I see now. It's great. Well, Thank you for having me tonight, along with Francis Lowe, who's the project manager on the project. So we're happy to be here to provide an overview and update on the project. So the project team for the current environmental phase includes CCTA, County, Caltrans, and a consultant team, WSP. CCTA is the implementing agency for the project. As I mentioned, I'm overseeing the project development for the project, but Francis Lowe is the project manager, and he is part of our consultant project management team at the authority. The county received a federal earmark for the project back in 2005 and began the planning work. While the county has transferred the project to the authority, the county remains an active key player and key member of the project, and they are also providing the local match for the federal funds. Caltrans is also a very important partner, as they are the lead agency for the CEQA NEPA documents that will be produced in the current phase. In May 2020, the authority entered into contract with the consultant team, WSP, to complete the current preliminary engineering and environmental clearance phase. And we are coordinating and partnering with other entities and agencies as shown in this list. This is the project area, and it is shaded in yellow on the map, which covers Contra Costa, Alameda, and San Joaquin counties. The project area is located south of Brentwood and north of Tracy, including communities like Mountain House and Town of Byron. The project study area is an envelope of area where we will be studying alternatives that are in this envelope. Just a brief history, State Route 239 was legislatively adopted in 1959 as a potential roadway linking State Route 4 from Brentwood to Interstate 205 or Interstate 580 west of Tracy. As I mentioned, county received a federal earmark in 2005. In 2012, the project was transferred to the authority for implementation. And since then, a feasibility and a Caltrans project initiation document were completed. In 2020, CCTA began the current preliminary and environmental clearance phase. This is a schedule where we're headed, which is very much dependent on funding availability. In the project initiation document that was completed in 2015, a few alternatives were identified. We'll be studying these alternatives in more detail in both the engineering sense, but also the environmental impacts in this current phase of work. So we just started our current phase in earnest just a few months ago. We hope to provide an update and overview of the project to you guys tonight. And with that, I will turn it over to Francis for project details and current scope.
Thank you, Stephanie, and good evening, everyone. My name is Francis Lowe, and as Stephanie mentioned, I'm the project manager for the project. Next slide, please. And the next one. So as Stephanie mentioned, there was a couple of studies that were completed previously, and I'd just like to kind of take a step back and do a quick recap. So what was identified in previous studies, there were a number of different alternatives. If you look at the screen there, there is basically a linkage between Brentwood at State Route 4 all the way down to 580, just west of Tracy. And so in the northerly portion, the alignment generally follows the existing Vasco Road. So a good part of what we expect to happen is the widening and upgrading of Vasco Road. And once we get past the area, kind of somewhere to the northwest of the airport, then there are multiple different alternatives that were identified, and they are shown in red. And then furthermore, there is also a kind of other ideas, essentially extending and upgrading the existing Byron Highway and Byron Road, kind of towards Mountain House. Next slide, please. So it is 239 is a very major project. I think it's roughly somewhere around 17 miles long. So depending on which alternative we look at, it may be a little longer, it may be a little shorter. And the big question is, what are we doing this for? Why do we need 239? So as previously identified, these are some of the key purpose and need for the project. Obviously, being a transportation project, we are looking at improving mobility for the community. And also with what's been happening in terms of growth in the area. And when I say area, it's not just the immediate area, but kind of the regional area. We want to facilitate goods movement and be able to support any planned development jobs in throughout that region and area. And another key item is really to reduce traffic through town of Byron. Currently, there is a lot of cut-through traffic going through the town of Byron, and I'm sure that a lot of the residents would be very happy if to see some of that traffic going around the area rather than through the town. We also look for opportunities to provide alternative travel modes for the area and to improve access to the airport. And then secondarily, also, we've seen wildfires and all major disasters, and one of the benefits the project could bring is to provide another evacuation route should there be any major event. And if Highway 4 is somehow impacted, then there's another route to evacuate and to access the area. And at the same time, there is a lot of habitat, protected habitat in the area, and there is an opportunity for us to do the project in such a way to enhance many of those habitat and protect the resources. Next slide, please. So as Stephanie mentioned, we are in the environmental phase, and some of the key item of work that would be happening is we would be refining the purpose and need. The project has been on the planning kind of path for over half a century, and things have changed over time, and that's both in terms of the physical conditions on the ground, and also on how transportation occurs today, and some of the new environmental and other regulations and needs that we are faced with today. So we do want to make sure that we are revisiting the purpose and need, making sure that we are doing the right project for the right reasons. At the same time, we have to collect a lot of data, we have to do surveys. And then based on all that information, what we will be developing is a set of more refined study alternatives, things that we believe are alternatives that would meet the needs and the requirement for the project, and also minimize any potential environmental and other impacts, and provide a good set of benefits for the cost of the project. And that process includes a project scoping phase. So once we have identified the alternatives, we would be presenting those possible alternatives to the public. And then based on that, we would refine the alternatives and then conduct the needed environmental analysis and prepare the necessary environmental document for public review and comment. And based on what we've heard, things may also have to be modified and refined until we get the final environmental document approved. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we talk about is the project is about 17 miles long, and obviously it's not a project that we expect to be constructed kind of fast and in one phase. So our current thinking is the initial segment that we would focus on is the area around the town of Byron and the airport. Next slide, please. So this is a kind of a more close-up of the area. And basically the initial segment that we are looking at for the entire project is to connect Byron Highway to Vasco Road, which is kind of the dotted beige line that you see on the screen there. And if we look back at the purpose and need that we had shown a little earlier, the different benefits for the project. And we kind of reproduce there right to the on the right hand side of the picture, and the red bullet items are the benefits that the initial segment would bring, probably to different extents. Obviously, it's not the full project, but the two key items, the two key benefits that I'd like to kind of bring up is that it definitely will take traffic away from the town of Byron and also significantly improve access to Byron Airport. Next slide, please. And the next one. So currently, what are we focusing on now? Some of the key things that we are currently working on is updating all the traffic numbers. As you know, COVID-19 has created a bit of a challenge for us to figure out, what the volumes are, because everything has changed significantly. So we are working around that issue and developing different traffic models to make sure that we have a good handle on the anticipated traffic volume on the new route. And then we're updating the land use information to reflect some of the changes in any land use plans. And that's not just within the area. As I mentioned earlier, the project serves a regional purpose. And so we have to look beyond the immediate project area to make sure that we capture any significant land use changes that has been occurring in the last few years. We have been working also with a number of different projects in the general area, specifically with Contra Costa Water on the pipeline project, and also working with the Delta Conveyance project team. So we are trying to share information and come up with design that would minimize conflicts between the different projects to avoid future issues. And then we are doing a bunch of field surveys, which I'll get into a little later, to look at the different habitat and environmental conditions. And also, we are going to get ready to set up some public outreach process to make sure that the input from the public is definitely taken into consideration in everything that we do. Next slide, please. So the data collection, we would kind of want the information on all the existing items on the ground, anything that's been built, like the existing Vasco Road, the canal, and some of the other features that we see. Utility information, as you know, there are a number of major pipelines in the area. And then also there are major PG&E transmission lines. So we want to make sure that we know where they are so that we don't kind of put anything in harm's way. And then, the typical engineering survey that we do. Next slide, please. As part of the process, some of the property owners in the area have received letters from the authority requesting permission to enter their property to basically, look at things and observe what's occurring on their property. We do not do any physical work, but it's mainly to observe, to look for different type of vegetation and creatures and stuff. Next slide, please. Yeah, so some of the few surveys that we're doing is to identify protected and special species, and then birds, any special flowers, floristic and wetlands. And because different plants can come up at different time of the year, so we actually do have to do that in different seasons. So the team has been out there observing some of the spring season type vegetation. I think they've got to go out there about this time again. And then later on in the summer, they would be out again to look for different type of flowers and vegetation. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, the project is about 17 miles long. So generally, I think the idea that we are pursuing is that we would want to identify the corridor where it's going to go. And based on that, we would define an initial fundable and usable segment and focus on developing that segment. At the same time, we want to make sure that the corridor identified is being included in local planning documents so that the right of way could be preserved for the future. And at the same time, we would look for every opportunity to identify additional funding. So with that, I hand it back to Stephanie. Stephanie, you're on mute.
Thank you. I even got a notice that says unmute. This table shows the current funding plan for the project. The project has a federal earmark, like we've been mentioning, and the local match is from the county. And these two fund sources are funding the current and the previous phases of work. We have $10 million in the regional measures 3 that can go towards partially funding the design and right-of-way phases of an initial phase that Francis was talking about, mainly specifically the Byron Fast connector that he showed on an earlier slide. And as with any project of this size, it will take various grants and funding sources to bridge the funding shortfall for the entire project, and CCTA staff will continue to look out for funding opportunities as the project moves forward. The project has a website on the CCTA, a dedicated website for the project is up on the slide in green text. And there is also a project fact sheet to inform the public about the status of the project and updates on the progress. We have and will continue to have stakeholder meetings, some one-on-one at key milestones to gather input and questions as we continue to move forward with the current environmental phase. And also, Francis and I will be happy to come back to this CAC group to update you on the project in the future.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Francis. Are there any questions from our committee members? Please speak up if you have some questions for either of them.
I have a question. This is Yolanda Vega from the City of Lafayette. Stephanie, what's the projected cost for the design?
We're in the environmental phase, and the design of the entire thing isn't what we would likely to pursue. It depends on what this first phase is that we would be pursuing it in the beginning. I turn to Francis to see if you have any preliminary costs or conceptual costs that. Because right now we have, I think it's all TBD at the moment. Really depends on what this initial phase would be and what the preferred alignment or selected alignment at the end to really define that. But Francis, I'll hand it to you too. If you want.
Yeah, I'll try my best. As Stephanie mentioned, it is kind of early and the project is obviously a very considerable size. If I were to venture a rough guess, the project is somewhere between $1.5 to $2 billion in today's dollars. That's today's dollar, right? So that doesn't include escalation. And so the overall design cost is going to be part of that number. But as we mentioned earlier, we don't really anticipate that we would be going out there anytime, within the next couple of years to start constructing the entire project. The focus would be on an initial fundable and usable segment, generally in the Byron area. As Stephanie mentioned, sometimes folks would also call that as the Byron Wasco connector. So basically, one of the as I showed in one of the earlier slides, the idea is to take traffic away from Byron, and also to provide better connection to Byron Airport. So does that answer your question, or would you like to get additional information on that?
Yeah, I'm just curious as to, I think you touched upon it, that when you said that was projected cost was today's dollars. We're looking at a few years down the road. So, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Any other comments from the committee?
This is Kent Moriarty from the city of Pinole. Sorry, Patty, I saw your hand too. I just had a quick question about in a project of this complexity, at what stage or what part of the schedule does public outreach typically occur?
Well, we will have a public scoping meeting, I believe in a few months. So that's, but during the feasibility stage, we had a few outreach activities in before this phase even started. So we have been engaging the stakeholders around the project area. And I know county did as well before we took on the project. So there's been significant stakeholder outreach and process that has already happened. But moving forward, as part of the environmental phase, we are required to do public scoping. And then again, another time before we release the environmental document. So there are a few opportunities there for these formal outreach activities, but like I was mentioning, we are actively trying to meet one-on-one with different stakeholders or cities or towns or agencies along the corridor or potential corridor and the project area, such as Byron and Mountain House that we've met one-on-one to kind of gather their input early on and to identify any concerns they already have and whatnot, or opportunities or questions. Francis, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so I think you're correct. I think during the feasibility stage, there were a good number of meetings with the public, and there were a fairly extensive outreach effort. And Stephen and I and others have been kind of making our rounds, if you will, going to like the BioMag meetings like this. And then we've also recently attended a meeting at Mountain House. So we welcome any input, and as I have spoken with some of the other folks who have reached out to us, is that we don't really need to wait for a meeting to receive input. If anyone have any ideas, any thoughts, you can send that to us anytime, and we will take that into consideration.
Francis, I noticed on one of your charts, you were showing how many people have agreed to have you come on their property and look and evaluate. It looked like there were not that many. I was just wondering, what do you make of that?
Well, that's fairly typical. A lot of folks, it's like someone coming over to your house to look through your house, and a lot of folks feel uncomfortable. So it's not unusual for a project like this. And we have ways to, obviously, if we have access, that would make it easier for us. But even in this scenario, we have ways to work around it. Like we mentioned, we have been partnering with many of the other agencies in the area, and a lot of time they have also performed different studies. And so by pooling some of the data together, I think we've got a pretty good sense of what's out there. We feel generally fairly comfortable that we would be able to do a pretty good job of what's required of the project.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering, are there any folks out there from the public who would like to speak or have any questions for Stephanie or Francis?
Okay.
If so, please let us know.
Larry, I have a question. I'm a committee member.
Sure.
Patty. Okay, thank you. Thank you both. That was very informative. And I felt that you are very concerned about the traffic in Byron. And I appreciate that. We were given somewhere that this whole project, when it finally gets started, is going to be in 3 phases. There is the phase 1, which would be Balfour to Camino Diablo. Phase 2 would be Camino Diablo to the Byron Tracy Highway. And then phase 3 would be from that point of the highway to 580. Of course, we're very concerned. We would like it, first of all, is that still part of the process that you have, or has that not been determined? What I hear you saying is that because we really need the traffic out of Byron, and we really need access to the airport so that people that go in there won't go through Byron. So can you clarify phase 1, 2, 3 for me, please?
Yeah, at the moment, we don't have identified phases in that order or even phases at all. The current phase is really to come up with the corridor and the alignment for this corridor.
Okay.
And then based on our studies and our engineering, we will come up with the best first phase with the funding that we have. And we know Byron residents would very much like to have these cut through traffic away from the town. And we've heard it through the Byron MAC as well. So we realize that concern is real, and we know that. And it is looking like that could be the very first phase. But we're so early on in our engineering and our environmental studies that we can't commit that as the first phase. But I can tell you that we don't have phases identified as what's 1, 2, and 3. That perhaps was another prior phase in the feasibility study, but at the moment we don't have those phases identified in that order or in that sequence or in those limits even.
If I may interrupt you.
Thank you.
And Matt,
I was going to say those may be the 3 components of the project: the north, the south, the north link, the south link, and the 580 link. Those were just part of that. Those were the tri-link. That's what the feasibility study looked at. So it kind of identified 3 parts of this project, tri-link. But now we're looking at it from a totally different perspective, and what Francis and Stephanie just described.
I have one more question. This is not just Contra Costa County. This is San Joaquin County, and this is Alameda County that will be affected by this as well, or benefit from it. Are those counties contributing?
Contributing in partnership? You're talking about like funding, or you're talking about just being a stakeholder and a partner?
I'm talking about funding.
Funding at the moment, no. The current phase is fully funded, as I mentioned, with the earmark and the match from the county. So we're okay with this phase. We can complete the environmental document, but in the future, no, we have not identified funding from these other partners in other counties. Not to say they won't, but just at the moment, no. That would be the answer.
Thank you.
I think we have some folks from the public who would like to make some comments. So I open it. I see the hand being raised. We will open it up to you.
Maya?
Please, you're on.
I'm Jack Nix, and I'm on Camino Diablo in Byron. Okay, and thank you for bringing this up. We appreciate it, but it's starting to feel like Groundhog Day. We keep going through this over and over again and coming. We had several carloads of people come to your meetings in Walnut Creek telling you about this problem. It was a wonderful thing when you built the bypass, the Highway 4 bypass, but all that did is to bring traffic down to Camino Diablo, which is the way people cut across. This is a north-south problem, north to south, south to north. But the solution is east to west, is connecting the Byron Highway to Vasco to get the cars off of Camino Diablo and out of Byron, or at least minimize it. We're not really a town, so we are at the mercy of the county. And so we need your help, and we hope, I realize you people are from all over Contra Costa County and you have different problems. You know, depending, most of you are more urban than anything else. But we're pretty rural. The amount of traffic has picked up so much. I thought it was 19,000 cars and trucks a day. I heard at the MAC meeting, it's over 20,000 now. So you can imagine looking out your front window and watching 20,000 cars go by every day. And we fought for the last 4 years to get trucks off of Camino Diablo. We got the bigger ones off if they behave themselves, and we got them to lower the speed limit. But it's backed up traffic. People drive maniacally here. So we take our lives in our hands pulling out of the driveway or trying to slow down to turn into our driveway. So I hope that you will, as was brought up before, that Patty did, is that you will do first to relieve that with the airport connector, whatever you want to call it. What has been proposed is a wonderful thing, but it was proposed in 1959. And so if you're going to have a solution that's has to be federal, state, and 3 counties, it's going to be really hard to get the funding and get people to agree on. If you start in the middle with the airport connector, that keeps it local and keeps it close. And so that's something I think that I hope that you will always consider. So we're only 11 or 1,200 people, but we're at the mercy of 20,000 cars a day. So I hate to be a whiner, but you know, so we live on Camino Diablo and we're terribly affected. The same way downtown, there's really only 2 roads, 2 streets through Byron, Camino Diablo and Byron Highway. And so we're trying to make it a better place to live, but it's become worse and worse for us. So I'll turn it over to the boss. Have you anything you want to say?
I just wanted to urge you to start your development from Camino Diablo over to Byron Highway. Don't start at the either ends, start in the middle, because it's quality of life for us. It's by quality of life, I mean living through pulling out of your driveway. It's so dangerous if you're pulling out, going east, there's double lines, but people are passing and we're going to have a head on. And if you're pulling out, turning in, going east, and you're turning into your driveway, the cars, two or three cars back, think you're slowing down to turn into the church, and they're passing, and I'm going to get T-boned. It's like the quality of life is about us being able to stay alive. And I do appreciate the effort and the advancement of this project. Thank you.
Stephanie, Francis, Matt, do you have any comments?
As I think kind of Stephanie mentioned, you know, right now we don't really, we are kind of early in the overall process, but as part of what we are doing, we will be looking at what could be the initial segment, and a lot of what we look at is based on the amount of money that we could reasonably anticipate that we would get, what provides the biggest set of benefits. And at least from the surface of it, and as we presented a little earlier, the connector segment seems to be, at least based on the information that we have now, it seems to be the one that looks the most promising in terms of being the initial segment. So, but again, you know, it's early yet, so we still have a lot more work to do. And throughout the process, you know, we would be reaching out to you guys to get your input and to consider any information that anyone would provide. So.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments from committee members or the public?
Vice Chair, we do have one more hand up from Steve Larson, if he could please
Go ahead, Steve.
unmute himself.
Thank you. Steve, go ahead, please.
Yes, my name is Steve Larson. I also live on Camino Diablo, about a couple hundred yards from Jack and Martha. and I'm a member of the Byron MAC. It's good to hear that you're continuing to move forward on this project, and the airport being the primary push. Is there anything we can do as citizens? You know, getting a hold of our representatives, state and federal, anything we can do to help push this. It's like Martha said, it's quality of life. I've almost been run over by a 18-wheel truck, and it's scary pulling out of your driveway. So please, you know, anything we can do, you know, let us know. I think, you know, the community really got together and got the trucks off the road. I think we can do the same thing to help get you funding if you give us an opportunity. So thank you.
Mr. Larson, as citizens, the biggest thing you can do for this, it's not going to build itself. As folks mentioned, we want to start in the middle, which is all Contra Costa. We're going to need to pass another countywide sales tax for transportation. And we've had a really hard time in East County getting even close to 50%, and we need 67%. So, you know, like Stephanie mentioned, we're funded for the environmental process, but we are not anywhere near funded for the construction process. So we are definitely going to need Byron's full support, and we mean everybody in Byron going and voting for a measure that will end up on your ballot at some point in the future. I can't say when, but and then there's going to be a whole lead up to that, like you guys went through last time, the development of an expenditure plan. So I'd say, you know, participate in the meetings that Francis and Stephanie are coordinating on this specific project, but also participate in the development of an expenditure plan again. We all hate to have to go through it again, but it will happen. And it's people on the ground that are going to get the work done. But thank you I appreciate you asking what you can do, because there is something.
Thank you all. And Stephanie, Francis, thank you. I'd like to move on to the next item on our agenda. And that is.
We have one more hand, Larry.
Oh, yes. So go ahead, please. Please, excuse me. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Linda Tooman, another member of the Byron MAC. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I have a couple of questions, but first of all, I would like to confirm, I had asked to be on a mailing list earlier so I would know about these meetings. And I'm getting notified. Thank you, Patty Bristow. I got notified from Patty, but can I follow up on that and be sure I'm on a mailing, the email list?
So, ma'am, this is the Citizens Advisory Committee. This topic only came up because Member Bristow requested it. It's not a typical item at this meeting.
Okay.
So it may show up in a year, 2 years, but we can certainly put you on the Citizens Advisory Committee list, but it's not probably the best for the project. I would say the project, you should go to the website, Stephanie or Francis?
Yeah, actually, I think Linda, I remember that you had asked to be
yes,
and you have been added to the project notification list.
Thank you.
I can confirm that.
And Linda, if you would like to subscribe to any other distributions from CCTA, you are welcome to go to ccta.net/subscribe, and you can actually request any meeting agenda packets or information that way.
Thank you. I'm just, I would just like to be involved during the different presentations. So I appreciate that. And I had a question. I actually was on Armstrong Road the other day, and I'm wondering if Mr. Lowe or Stephanie, if you've had a chance to actually physically go down there yet and look at that connection.
So I'll answer first. I have been on Armstrong Road a number of times. Did some work for the airport way back when, and so I have some familiarity with the area. So I think I kind of know what you guys were thinking, but I think once the pandemic thing it settles a little more, we'd be more than happy to come out and talk to you guys and you know, listen to ideas that you guys have. It's probably something that we would want to do after we started the project scoping process, which hopefully is going to happen later on this year. there's going to be a formal project scoping meeting. And during that time, we would provide ideas as to some of the alternatives that we are going to be studying and stuff like that. And so we definitely would like to talk to you guys further, to listen to any ideas that you guys may have.
On one of your slides earlier, you showed a map. I'm assuming that's a tentative map. I'm wondering if you have more of a zoomed in version of it so we can see, or is it just not that formalized yet to see the actual streets and everything on it?
Like you said, Linda, it's really not that formalized. It's a high level document. And part of what our current work is to actually take it from a high level conceptual document to give it more definition, to be a little more specific about where things are going to go. And that's why sometimes, and I could definitely understand, sometimes there's a frustration. Gee, haven't you guys looked at that before, and then you already draw a line on the map? And the difference is that, when you draw a line on the map, it's a line, but what we need to do in the current work is to give the line more definition and to be more precise as to exactly where on the ground the line is going to be. So, so hopefully that answers the question.
I have one more partial statement. When I was down there the other day, I did notice a sign for East Bay Regional Park. And I'm wondering if that short amount of ground between Armstrong Road and Vasco, is that all East Bay Regional Park?
Not sure whether it's the regional park. There is a habitat conservation area in generally kind of on the north and the west side of the airport. So I am not aware that the park district has anything there. Not to say that they don't, but definitely there are habitat conservation, and whether that could actually be part of the habitat conservation or not, I don't know. It's probably something that once we can get together physically, we can meet with you guys and we can look at all that together.
Okay, and just in closing, I would like to say that I've been on the Byron MAC for several years. The most constant concern that we hear from the citizens is traffic. Traffic, traffic, traffic. And I do want to thank you because you've certainly heard it from us before, but it is the consuming concern. And the residents of Camino Diablo are honestly, their quality of life has definitely been impacted very negatively by this. So any efforts you can make and any efforts we can make to make this a priority for the residents of Byron, we would really appreciate. Thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you. Thank you for being with us this evening. And
I think we
letting
have
staff-
one. We have one
Go ahead,
more.
Patty. Patty, you say, go ahead, please.
No,
Mike Neeson.
Mike
Mike
Neeson.
Neeson. Could you recognize Mike Neeson, please?
Yes, I'm just looking.
Yeah, I was trying to raise my hand, but yeah.
Oh, please, Mike, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm glad that the first part of this segment of your agenda, you were focusing on the airport and showing a possible route through there. Everybody's pretty much told you that the traffic through Byron is horrible, and that's been going on since Parsons was involved with this 4 years ago, and we were having meetings. But aside from that part of the problem, we're still going to get the most bang for our buck no matter what, is because your bottleneck is coming through Byron. The traffic is going to flow much, much better if you can keep it off Camino Diablo, which is a minor arterial, which has turned into a complete mess. Keep it going down keep it going down Vasco and cut across to the Byron Highway. That's going to be good for all the commuters, all the stakeholders. It's going to keep traffic flowing. That's the big bonus here, besides the biggest concern, which is the safety of the people of Byron along Camino Diablo and on the Byron Highway as well. I'll try to keep it short here because everybody's pretty much gone over my points. I think the federal Congressman Wise, I believe somebody said you were talking with McNerney about this, and I think the opportunity to strike hopefully is going to be here in the next year or two with all the stimulus money they're talking about. So if everybody, the CCTA, the grant writers there, the public, the MAC, and I'm on the Byron MAC, I'm sorry, I should have said that as well, can keep tugging at his collar or with his staff too about how important this is. That's one avenue. As far as I can find out about the park, if I have a good friend of mine that's a superintendent over there, what property that is. And I guess in the last thing is that does this almost set a record for something that was legislatively adopted 62 years ago, and it still hasn't even barely begun to get started without some of the routes that have gone away, I guess.
There are dozens of them across the state that have not even gone this far.
Yeah, and I can see building in segments. That's what they did with the Crosstown Freeway over there in Stockton, and it worked out well. And I know you'd like to go contiguously from one end to the other. Usually don't start in the middle, but in this case, I'll reiterate it one more time. To get the traffic out of Byron, keep it out of that bottleneck, and keep it flowing is going to be the best bang for everybody's buck right now.
Yeah,
And
thank
that's it. Everybody else has done wonderfully that spoke up tonight. So thank you very much for your efforts, and whatever we can do, please keep us apprised of the meetings, and good job. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you for the opportunity to update you guys. And yes, we'll come back when we have something substantive to update. So thank you for the opportunity, and I'll head it off back to
Thank you.
the
Thanks,
Spice.
Stephanie. Thanks, Francis. Thanks, Matt. Let's move on to the next agenda item, please. It's the City of San Pablo's calendar years 2018 and 2019 Growth Management Program Compliance Checklist. And Matt, if I could impose upon you to introduce the folks who are going to make the presentation on behalf of San Pablo.
Love to, Vice Chair Rosenberg. Tonight from the City of San Pablo, we have Libby Tyler, who is their Director of Planning. I'm not sure if that's the exact title, maybe Community Development Director. I'll let her introduce herself. And we have Alan from the Public Works Department. Oh, there he is. Okay, so we have Libby and Alan from the City of San Pablo. This is Libby's first checklist, so go easy on her. I'll let her present the highlights of the calendar year 18-19 checklist.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening, everybody. Happy to be here with the committee, and I'll be tag teaming with my colleague, Alan Panganaban, who's in the Public Works Department. And I have a few slides of highlights from San Pablo, so I'll try to share those now if I may. Okay, and rather than going through the checklist, just thought I'd highlight a few things. And as Matt mentioned, I'm relatively new at San Pablo. I just completing my first year as planning manager, and prior to that, I was a contract planner, interim planning manager. So been learning quite a bit and really enjoy working with the CCTA staff. So this was a process that we used for the calendar year 18-19, which brackets the fiscal years 17-18 and 18-19 report. It was a joint effort of our Public Works and Community Development departments. We did take the opportunity to have preliminary review by the CCTA staff, and Matt was very gracious and kind and identified some incomplete areas to improve. We were able to bring these to our city council, and their packet was on April 1st, and then they reviewed this on April 5th and passed their resolution 2021-039, which authorized the city manager to certify the checklist for submittal to the CCTA. And then we did submit that to the staff on April 7th. And I'm going to turn it over to Alan from Public Works to talk through the next few slides.
Good evening, council members. My name is Alan Panganiban. I too am relatively new with the city of San Pablo, about 2 years. So this is our first presentation of this material. So San Pablo belongs to the West County, West Contra Costa County Technical Advisory Committee. We are represented by our esteemed council member, Rita Xavier, in the board for WCTAC. I myself am involved with the Technical Advisory Committee, and Libby is, since she's our planning manager, she's involved with the county's planning directors. Next slide, please. And I just want to give a few highlights of works in San Pablo. One of the highlights that we're currently finishing is, and we're proud of, is the Wildcat Creek Trail project. It's about a mile-long creek trail project right in the heart of the city, adjacent to our new city hall and proposed development. It provides recreational amenity for the citizens of San Pablo, and as a walking path. And again, at the heart of a city, we do need to have pocket parks within it, and etc. One of the projects that we recently completed, San Pablo Avenue Complete Streets. It's about a mile-long project between cooperation with the city of Richmond here in the city of San Pablo was taking the lead on it. And our upcoming project is Rum Rail Boulevard. It's a 1.7 mile long project. And we're turning a 4-lane roadway, providing a road diet for it, beautifying that corridor. And one of our hopes and goals for the project is to add, it's a safety project to slow down vehicles, provide more amenities for pedestrians and bicyclists. So in here, we listed some of our projects that's happened, and will happen in the city of San Pablo. I'll turn it over to Libby again.
And I'm just going to focus on some of the plans and programs and projects we have going in community development. It's my department. One of the things I worked on last year was in 2019, actually, were updates to our zoning ordinance, and always with an eye to modernizing our development regulations, being friendlier to housing, and more attuned to all mobility needs, not just the automobile. Also, we got involved in census outreach that actually extended from 2019 to 2020, of course, and we did receive a grant from the county to help with those outreach efforts. A big project for me is, I do a lot of zoning administration, was to update our ADU, accessory dwelling unit requirements in our zoning ordinance to comply with the more recent state law. And this was a big undertaking, but gosh, it's really working. We have about tripled, seems like more in terms of inquiries and projects. So people are really interested and adding density and adding additional housing units through the accessory dwelling units. Also in 2020, the city of San Pablo adopted an affordable housing strategy. It's an excellent policy report. And very importantly, the city hired a housing analyst who now works in the city manager's office. That's Jennifer Kaufman. And that's made a great difference for us to focus on housing and affordable housing options in particular. We were successful in receiving SB2 and LEAP grants to help us with the general plan and housing element update that we're just now undertaking. Our general plan is about 10 years old, and so we're looking at an update that's going to include the addition of an environmental justice element, and the housing element, as with all the jurisdictions in our area, is going to be due for update the end of 2022. So with the use of our general funds, in addition to the grant funds from the state, we've retained Diet Bhatia from Oakland. Kittleson Associates will be our transportation consultant, and Rencon will be our environmental consultant. And then we also have a multi-departmental team to help to oversee and assist with the work. And of course, that includes community development, public works, and our housing analysts. And we'll be starting, before you know it, with outreach to the public, stakeholder meetings, things of that nature. So we hope to provide additional information on this big effort. One of the outcomes from this joint general plan housing element update will be a lot of rezonings in San Pablo. We don't necessarily have zoning categories that are conducive to current development demands, and certainly not for promoting additional housing. We are pretty well built up, and yet we do have housing production expectations. So there's a lot more we can do in terms of zoning designations consistent with our new general plan designations, and then further zoning amendments, looking particularly at things like reducing parking requirements and making housing more available in different parts of the community. We do have another request out there to ABAG MTC for what they call REAP and PDA funds. Those are priority development areas, and these are available for corridor plans. We do have 2 corridors that are within that eligibility, and one is Rumrill, for which we don't have a land use corridor plan, and the other would be 23rd Street, where we do have a plan, but it's a bit out of date. And we've also requested assistance on a VMT, vehicle miles traveled reduction policy. So we're waiting to hear back on those. We'll know more next month. I wanted to also talk about developments, not just in the 2 years of the report, but looking ahead. And reported in the 1819 report are 2 major projects that involved traffic studies. Was a big expansion of the San Pablo Lytton Casino parking lot. And this was to enable them to actually be able to accommodate what they can provide for customers at the casino, potentially a redevelopment site as well, perhaps looking down in the future. Also, we have a standalone dialysis clinic proposed along San Pablo Avenue that did have a traffic impact study prepared as well. I think I mentioned a little bit how we've had a real increase in ADUs, and just between 2019, 2020, it looks like those have really tripled, going from something like 10 a year, and last time it looked like about 30 in 2020, and it's just accelerated in 2021. We're also seeing more single family infill, and then densification of some of our smaller infill sites. The Plaza San Pablo area is the area along San Pablo Avenue where our city hall, our new city hall is. You've probably driven by there. And we do have 3 projects that are in preliminary review stage. They're significant projects for San Pablo. One is right on San Pablo Avenue between the library and the Walgreens. We call it Block C in our specific plan. That is proposed for 84 multifamily units and 12,000 square feet of commercial or retail. Behind that on Chattleton along the creek, there was another infill development. This is actually small lot subdivision, 20 single family residences, very interesting design. And 8 of those will actually have ADUs built right in to these townhouse style developments. Right on the old City Hall, a beautiful old City Hall property, we'll be retaining the historic buildings. And we're working, the city is working with Danco Development from Arcata, they're affordable housing developers. They have put in a request now going into the second round for low-income housing tax credits, very competitive program. And the request is for 100 affordable multifamily units plus 11,000 square feet of supportive commercial. Smaller housing proposals that are out there in, again, the preliminary stage, about a 14-unit affordable housing project on Rumrill and Market. We have one at the old nursery site on Road 20, just east of San Pablo Avenue. And that could be very intensively developed with perhaps up to even 60 affordable units there. We will see. I mentioned 342 to 442 22nd Street. This was a recent project. It's for 8 units. I think it's significant because those are 2 single family lots where they are proposing townhouse style and a major parking reduction. So I think the development is very clever. It's a new development pattern for San Pablo, and they're using TDM, Transportation Demand Management approach, to reduce the parking requirement by about half. Of course, it's very proximate to transit, so it makes a lot of sense in that location. Just coming to our planning commission now is a self-storage project, 2600 Moraga by Contra Costa College. And this is an important project because it enables the city to sell a portion of a larger parcel, which the other half, or about 2/3 actually, is a site of a future community park for San Pablo, which we're calling the El Portal Park. So that's a snapshot of recent development. This is the 2020 APR report that we did do for the state. And it shows that we are working hard, like a lot of communities, to reach those housing needs allocation, regional housing needs allocation numbers that the state has for every community. We're not there yet, but it is growing. In 2020, we went from 7 to 19, and it's going to be at least double that, possibly much more if some of those preliminary development projects succeed. We do have hope that we can reach our targets by the time the next cycle comes. And even if we have to carry some over, we do believe that we will get very close and hopefully can attain our housing targets. Something we think a lot about in San Pablo. So that concludes kind of our highlights: public works, community development, housing, transportation, regional issues. And we are happy to answer any questions you may have. And I will.
Thank you, Libby. Thank you, Alan. By the way, any committee members would like to ask questions of Libby or Alan, very fine presentation. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Doing good work in San Pablo, for sure. I'm opening it up to the committee. Do I hear anything from our committee?
Hey, Larry, Billy Hurley from San Ramon here.
Hi.
Hey, thanks to both of you. Sound like you have a lot going on in San Pablo. Appreciate the presentation. It was very good. I see in 2017 that you had adopted a bicycle and pedestrian master plan. Have you had much progress with that plan?
Alan,
yes, we. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Alan.
Yes, we are. We are slowly but surely trying to implement some of the facets of that master plan. For example, on Giant Road, we are trying to build a cycle track as part of that project. And as I mentioned before, on the Rumrill project, which is a major principal arterial, we're converting the road diet into a class 2 bicycle path on each side of the roadway. So that's going to be a significant pathway for cyclists in the heart of San Pablo.
Appreciate it. I know down here in the southern part of the county with COVID, we've seen a massive increase in cycling. So I would guess you probably did up there too. Appreciate it though.
Any other comments from our committee?
Hi, this is Kent Moriarty from your neighbor, the city of Pinole. I also had just a comment similar to what Bill Hurley mentioned. I know you guys adopted the bike ped master plan a few years ago, but I was really encouraged to see from your presentation that the city of San Pablo didn't just stop at that, but I also see the Safe Routes to School master plan and this bike ped corridor study. So it seems like the bike ped master plan is continuing to kind of drill down and focus on more areas that can yield improvement. So thanks for that.
Any other committee members? Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak? Raise your hand, please. If not, and no further questions, may I have a motion to approve the report and a second by someone, please? Can I have a motion?
I'll motion it.
Oh, go ahead. Excuse me. Bruce, you're going to, okay.
Yes.
You made the motion. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Fifi, could you please conduct the roll call vote?
Committee Member Ash, how do you vote?
Aye.
Bauer,
Aye.
Bristow,
Aye.
Hammond,
Aye.
Hurley,
Aye.
Leahy,
Aye.
Linder,
Aye.
Moriarty,
Aye.
Vega, Committee Member Vega, how do you vote? Committee Member Yao,
Aye.
Committee Member Vice Chair Rosenberg,
Aye.
and Committee Member Vega, can you unmute yourself?
Yolanda, can you hear us?
Okay,
Okay.
motion passes by majority present.
Thank you.
I'm
The
sorry.
next-
This is Yolanda. I'm sorry. I just got back. I had to take a break. So, I'm so sorry. I apologize to the city of San Pablo, but I said, watch, I'm going to have to run to the bathroom. And that's when she's going to call for the vote. So yes, yes.
Thank you,
Okay.
Yolanda.
I'll
Appreciate it.
record your yes vote.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the City of El Cerrito's calendar years 2018 and 2019 Growth Management Program Compliance Checklist. Matt, could you please introduce the El Cerrito staff who are going to make the presentation?
Thank you, Vice Chair Rosenberg. Yes, tonight from the city of El Cerrito, my city, I'll throw that in, is Yvette Ortiz. She is the Public Works Director for the city, and she will be presenting their calendar year 18-19 checklist. You may remember her from last cycle. This is not her first checklist, so I'll turn it over to Yvette and let her present the city's checklist.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. As Matt indicated, my name is Yvette Ortiz, the City of El Cerrito's Public Works Director. And this is my second presentation to your committee. But it's like a world of difference. I don't know, these last 2 years, it seems like things have turned upside down. But I definitely want to thank you for the opportunity to highlight El Cerrito's growth management program. As some of you may know, or most of you may know, the City of El Cerrito is a relatively small city in West Contra Costa County, County, and we're 25,000 people, less than 4 square miles, and right at the Contra Costa County, Alameda County limit line. And we're small, but very well connected to the regional transportation system. We're located right off of San Pablo Avenue, which is a state route 123, I-80. We have 2 BART stations. We're well served by AC Transit. And we also have a regional class 1 mixed use path known as the Ohlone Greenway. And I wanted to highlight the Ohlone Greenway today because you'll see there are several projects that we've been implementing in the last few years that are centered around the Ohlone Greenway, which serves our San Pablo Avenue priority development area, and which is also our high density transit oriented neighborhood corridor where we're focusing development on. Let me share my presentation. Hold on. Is that visible to you?
Yes.
Great, thanks. So I just pictured here, for example, to the top left is Centennial Park. Centennial Park was completed in 2019. It's right along the Ohlone Greenway. It's in the Midtown section of San Pablo Avenue in El Cerrito, and it's serving an existing and planned transit-oriented development along San Pablo Avenue. It's now a very well-used park, and you can see at the top right corner there, the BART tracks overhead. The Ohlone Greenway is not just a transportation facility for us, but it's also a linear park that's serving existing and future residents of El Cerrito. So just highlighting a few things that are happening in El Cerrito tonight. I wanted to give you a snapshot of some key transportation projects, some major development that's been going on, focusing on things that happened during the reporting period, but also that are current, implementation of mitigation programs, as well as our housing production. And some of these projects may look familiar to you, committee members who were here a couple of years ago. As many of you know, development projects, transportation projects take years to develop, as given, based on the conversation you had earlier today. These are smaller in scope, but it still take a while to get the funding together. And then from concept, funding, design to implementation take a while. So some of these will sound familiar, but we have definitely reached new milestones, and I want to highlight those. One of the key projects that we worked with BART on was BART's project, but the city worked closely with them, was the modernization of the El Cerrito del Norte BART station at the north end of town. And you can see here on the top left, I'm sorry if I get my right and left confused, it happens. But on the top left is the recently renovated BART station. And this was just completed in March. It was a 4-year construction project. It started in 2017 and was completed just, like I said, last month. It's a beautiful modernization for our area. It's really gonna help transform this area of El Cerrito, which is currently very auto-dominated, auto-oriented. They did a lot of improvements to increase access for pedestrian and bicycle access, and just also increasing the capacity, the paid area for the interior of the station, making it, they moved the elevators and the stairwells into the paid area. So it's a safer environment and a more pleasing environment for BART customers. So we also worked very closely with this BART project. We developed our own City of El Cerrito project called the Ohlone Greenway Access, Safety, and Placemaking Improvement Project. And you'll see the 2 images on the right, top and bottom. That project was focused on improving access from surrounding city to the BART stations and making the BART, activating those spaces. So we improved crossings. So on the bottom right, you'll see the improved crossings. We added special pavements, widened crosswalks, flashing crosswalks, bulb outs, and also we widened the Ohlone pathway itself like as you see on the top right, it's a widened pathway with seating and trees. And that project was funded by a variety of sources, mostly a federal grant, but also complemented by some Measure A funding and some sub-regional transportation mitigation program funding. Another project, which is smaller, but also Measure J funded transportation livable community funds, is on the bottom left. That was the Ohlone Greenway wayfinding signage and amenities project, and that project was completed in 2018. Similarly, we worked very closely with the city of Richmond to complete an important crossing of the Ohlone Greenway that connected to the Richmond Greenway. And that project was open to the public in 2018, and it crossed San Pablo Avenue. And we had various other smaller projects in terms of transportation. One of the other ones I wanted to highlight was the Korematsu Safe Routes to School project that implemented a segment of what's known as our East Side Bicycle Boulevard. And that project also benefited from some technical assistance that we got from the CCTA for Safe Routes to School. The biggest project we've been working on in the last few years is the El Cerrito del Norte TOD Complete Streets Improvements Project. And this is right around the BART station. So again, it's really focusing on our north end of town, which has the most opportunity for large parcels, very auto-oriented. It's where San Pablo Avenue is the widest. So just focusing on making that more livable, walkable, bikeable. And we were able to secure additional federal funding, Measure J funding, as well as developer contributions for that project. And that was in 2016. Since then, we've been doing some more engineering, and we started the Caltrans development process, because a big segment of this project is State Route 123. So we have to go through the Caltrans development process. So that started in 2019, moving on to 2020. This year, we're going to continue to pursue, continue to develop the design with ultimate goal of constructing the project in 2023. We are looking to secure additional funding for this project, just given current best practices have changed for bikeways. We're hoping to upgrade the bikeways from like just bike lanes to protected bike lanes, class 4 bike lanes, which are the recommended context-sensitive bikeways for roadways such as San Pablo Avenue. And so we're working with the development at the corner, which I'll highlight a little bit later, to apply for an Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities grant from the state, as well as additional money from the West Contra Costa Transportation Mitigation Program. So we've been busy with development. I definitely highlighted this last time, but ever since the city adopted the San Pablo Avenue specific plan in 2014, it very much spurred development in El Cerrito, and we been nonstop. In addition to processing development applications, we've concurrently been looking at how to streamline applications and support development. So there's additional additional program strategies that we've been developing during that time, and they're listed here. One of the few things that happened during the reporting period is that the city adopted an inclusionary zoning ordinance in 2018, and that required that, let me look at my numbers here. That required that new development set aside 10 to 12% units for low to moderate income households, and or pay an in-lieu fee to the city for development of affordable housing. We also, one of the things that we found as we were implementing the San Pablo Avenue specific plan was that one of the barriers to development was our sanitary sewer. Our sanitary district, which is separate than the city, required each development to do a capacity study. And there were different developments were finding spot issues with the sewer capacity, which required multi-million-dollar improvements for one development, which is not could not make which was an obstacle to development. It wasn't financially feasible. So we worked with MTC to get funding so we could develop a master plan and ultimately an impact fee to help assist with improving the sewer infrastructure. These are some other highlights of projects that we've been building. I mentioned the top left project that we built completed in 2018. That was the Hannah Gardens right next to City Hall. It was over 60 affordable senior housing units. And in total, since the San Pablo Avenue specific plan was adopted, we've had about 19 projects, 18 that have been approved, constructed. There's only one that's remaining to be approved. So these two here featured on this slide have been completed. And I'll focus on that in my next slide. So we have 4 completed projects. The one on the top here was just recently completed in February of 2021, and it's known as Cerrito Vista. And we also have 2 projects that are under construction and 11 that are approved, and 2 hotels, an approved 124 unit hotel and an 84 room hotel that's proposed. I wanted to highlight this Mayfair block because this is development that's currently under construction right across the North BART station. Again, there's a lot happening in that area. And this building, this development includes 2 components. Phase 1, which is a market rate, 156 units, and an affordable housing, 67 units that is at the second phase that it's currently looking for funding to make it happen. The construction of the current building is the market rate building. It's 6 stories and it's modular construction. So it's moving really quickly. The building, the developer pulled permits in March of 2020, and they're expected to complete construction this summer. And the affordable housing will follow later. But what's interesting about this development is that it's 2 buildings, but they'll share a common area and a parking garage. And this is a simulation I showed last time, but I think it's awesome to just see it actually moving forward. This is what this corner of San Pablo Avenue looked like. Again, auto dominated. There's missing crosswalks, empty parking lots, and we have the funding for the complete streets improvements that'll come soon in 2023, and the Mayfair here in the back. That project is being constructed right now. We also have an approved hotel that's in building permits coming through here, and then this is what the future could look like once there's other development on that block. But basically, at least 2 corners have been approved and are moving forward. This is another location in Midtown with 2 approved projects. Cerrito Vista, which was constructed just a couple months ago, finished. Another one that's entitled, and again, another more bike and pet improvements. I just wanted to highlight that during the reporting period, we were busy working with the West Contra Costa Transportation Advisory Committee on updating their sub-regional transportation mitigation program. That took a few years, and it was adopted by our city council in April of 2019. And we also worked on our own city transportation impact fee to help fund complete streets improvements and active transportation program improvements. And that ordinance was adopted by our city council in 2019. Just lightly touching on housing. This is just the history of housing in El Cerrito. Most of our housing was built prior, 65% of our housing was built prior to 1965. And then we had some housing, as you can see, between 1970 and early 2000s. But then it was quiet for a while. And then after the San Pablo Avenue specific plan is approved, you'll see the big jump in here in terms of housing production. In terms of affordable housing, El Cerrito is definitely on target to meet our regional housing needs allocation. We currently have met our above moderate allocation and are very low with, if you consider the entitled projects. And then we're working on that other, the low and moderate ranges of affordable housing. The good news is that we hope to meet those targets as well, because we are currently working with BART on a transit-oriented development at the El Cerrito Plaza BART station, which is the second BART station in El Cerrito on the south end of town. And that concludes my presentations. I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee members may have. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing.
Vice Chair Miller may be recognized.
Chair Miller, Vice Chair Rosenberg, your microphone is muted. And we have a hand from committee member Leahy.
Is that better?
Much better.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, Yvette, a very fine presentation. I travel through your city upon occasion, and I've noticed the improvements and the improvements that you've mentioned tonight that are going to happen in the next few years. You're doing a superb job, you and the staff. Now I'm going to turn it over to my committee members for any comments or questions, please. Claire?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Fabulous presentation. I'm very excited to see all of these changes. I ride my bike quite a bit out on the Ohlone Greenway. I take BART out there. So thank you for those amenities. I wanted to ask you about the apartment buildings at BART. Do you have completion dates tentative for those?
So the north, the Mayfair block, the market rate housing that's being constructed right now, they're aiming to complete that construction this summer. In terms of the affordable housing component, which is the second building, they're still looking for their funding to make that project complete. We have a second development at the plaza, and that is not included in these totals. The proposal there is for another 700 to 800 units, and that is just starting the kind of the planning phases. So they'll be reaching out to the community to get input on what that project will look like.
Thank you. I think once those numbers are in, I think you might be the first community that I've seen that's hitting its RHNA goal. So congratulations.
Yvette, I think I was reading something about it at one of your BART stations. There was an issue about parking. I don't know if you wanted to maybe mention that. What's going on with parking?
So that's at the El Cerrito Plaza BART station, and that's the one where currently it's an urban with parking station. And so BART's goals when they develop a station like that is minimal to no replacement BART parking. So there's currently like 700 BART parking spaces on the various parking lots that surround the station. And so there's a proposal for 700 to 800 new units. So El Cerrito City is working really closely with BART on looking at access strategies to decrease the demand for parking in that station. Actually, currently over half of the people that use that station walk and bike. And the shed, the customer shed is about 1.5 miles. So it's walkable, bikeable distance. The problem is topography. There's a lot of customers that come from the hills. And so it's not walkable or bikeable. And some of the transit connections, there are no transit connections east-west. So it's a kind of a corridor. It is a corridor problem, and so we're working with BART and looking at like all the R line stations and improving access to those stations to minimize parking demand. But at the same time, we're working with BART to determine whether or not the city can manage on-street parking in a way that will provide spaces that may be displaced.
Other comments from our committee members, please?
I think you might have touched on this on a previous response. I just wanted to make sure I heard you clearly. You have both of your BART stations have had affordable housing developments within BART property?
Well, the North BART station, it's not on BART property. It's a redevelopment property, a former redevelopment property that the city entered into development agreement for. So currently there are no proposals for development on the BART parcels at that station. But the second one is the South Station does include development on BART property.
Any other comments or questions for Yvette? Yvette, thank you very much for a fine presentation. I'm going to be looking around every time I go through El Cerrito to check things out, but everything looks, you can just see it happening in El Cerrito. It's exciting to notice, and thank you.
Thank you.
If there's no further discussion, by the way, is there anyone else from the public who would like to make a comment? It's your opportunity now. Well, may I please have a motion to approve the report? And I think I know who's going to make the motion. Bruce?
Yes, if I may, I would like to make that motion, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bruce. And a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Fifi, could you please conduct a roll call vote?
Committee Member Ash, how do you vote?
Aye.
Bauer?
Aye.
Bristow?
Aye.
Hammond?
Aye.
Hurley?
Aye.
Leahy?
Aye.
Linder? Committee Member Linder? Committee Member Moriarty?
Aye.
Vega?
Aye.
Yao?
Aye.
Vice Chair Rosenberg?
Aye.
Committee Member Linder? Okay.
I logged in
and
late, but Zane from City of Oakley is here. So I'm going to vote aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
And it looks
Good
like
to see
motion passes unanimously by all members present.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is reports. And does anyone have a summary report on the recent Administration and Projects Committee or the Planning Committee or the Authority Board meeting? I don't know if anyone has attended any of those meetings, but maybe Matt has something to say about that. Any reports you might have, Matt, if you're there?
Yes, Vice Chair. I don't think there's anything major to report out other than we are working on our allocation, our post-COVID Measure J allocation plan, and we've promised to come back to you with that once adopted. We've received some grants, some large grants for EV infrastructure, electric vehicle infrastructure installation throughout the county. We're focusing on the cities of Richmond and Pittsburgh for this particular grant. And I think Peter Engel said he would come and share that with you, and that was presented to our board last week. So those are some of the highlights at the board level.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Next on our agenda is member and staff comments. Do any committee members or staff have anything they would like to share with us? Or Matt, you may have some more you'd like to share with us. Nothing? Anybody?
Vice
Any-
Chair Rosenberg, may I have the floor?
Please.
I just wanted to request CAC members for future meetings if they could please log in 10 to 15 minutes prior to the meeting. Once the meeting starts, there's a lot of things that go into motion, and I'd like to have everyone, just as you would if we were at the dais, to come in and have your seat at 5 to 10 minutes prior to the meeting. I'd like to continue that process here virtually.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
I have a comment.
Yes, please.
I just want to thank everybody for having patience with my constituents and myself tonight with State Route 239. I just think, I know we took up so much time, and I was at the MAC meeting last night, which went on for 3 hours. But I just want to thank you all. I know we're far east and we're way out here, but I just, it is paramount what is happening to us here in Byron. And I can't thank you all enough for your patience tonight. Thank you.
Well, all I can say is their presentations were compelling. I think everybody, staff as well as the committee, understands what you're facing, and very well. So everybody did a very fine job of stating their case. Anything else from any other committee members?
Oh, this is Haley. This is my last meeting.
Yes,
so I just
please.
wanted to say it was great getting to know all of you, and I really enjoyed my time on the committee. I'm actually moving out of Pleasant Hill. I'm moving to Berkeley to be closer to work.
Okay.
The traffic is back. And now I'll be able to bike to work if I wanted to. So
No, I understand, Haley, but thank you. We appreciate your time, your work, and best of everything. Best of everything. Are there any other comments from the committee or anyone from the public would like to speak? If so, raise your hand or press *9. Then we will move on to the next subject, which is we're looking forward. Are there any topics that the committee members would like to see on a future committee agenda? If so, please join in and make any comments. There are some very good comments, very good suggestions that we've been supplied with, but there may be some new ideas, new issues that we want to study or learn about. Here's the opportunity to say something to staff. Anyone?
Yeah, I actually have a thought.
Please.
Obviously, I'm fairly new, so this may be something that has already come up to this committee recently. I was just curious to find out more information about our bus transit in the county, just like in terms of how they determine usage and routes, and what the process is to put input for that. I've talked to a few people in my community about it, and I don't know much about it myself, so I just wanted to present that as a possible topic, at least maybe a presentation or an informational item in the future.
Matt, can you maybe have that happen?
I think I don't think we've had the local bus operators in here since I've been serving with this committee, so I think that's appropriate.
Okay, because I know we've had Bart came in, but that's great. So you'll take care of it.
Yeah, and they are doing some good stuff, so that would be good.
Okay. I have a request, Larry.
Yes.
Yeah, I would like to know more about, because it's very fashionable right now and on the rise. I would like to know about ADUs in the unincorporated area of Contra Costa County. If we could have someone who could kind of give us an overview on permits and how it has changed, and is it true that we can put one up in 30 days? supposedly they've made some great big huge changes, and I would like to know about it.
Matt, do we need to bring somebody in from the county?
Yeah, we could do that.
Thank you.
Good suggestion. Very good suggestion. I think that pretty much covers our.
Jared,
Go ahead.
I had one. I asked, I think, a couple of months ago, Matt, about the long-term changes to transit as a result of this pandemic and how people were starting to look at that, right? That less people may be commuting every day to the city, less people certainly would be taking public transit. I still feel like we have an attitude like one day in September or a year from now, everybody's going to go back on the public transit, but they may not. And just how we're starting to look at that and have that conversation and any data that could be used.
Yeah,
Matt?
thanks, Jared. I've been trying to find an opportunity to put that together with the checklist and everything. But yeah, I'd like to get Bart in, and maybe I can combine that with the local bus providers, see what everybody's doing, you know, what the transit side is doing and what the planners are doing. So yeah,
and I know
you're right. September is going to be some craziness on the roads, I think.
Yeah, and I know it's not an easy question, and I know people don't have all the answers, but that's why I kind of want to see if we can help lead in those discussions, right?
They're thinking about it, so I think, you know, they'd be happy to talk about it.
Jared, I think you raised a very good point. And Matt, Jared, everyone else, I think we've noticed one thing when we're driving around. Traffic seems to be back without a survey.
But it has different characteristics in terms of time and duration of the congestion. So there's a lot going on that we don't fully understand.
And with those changes, there's still not a lot of people back in offices.
Right. That's why September is going to be scary.
Right, September, and then in January, that's going to change. And I talked to two people today who said when they have to go back in January, they said not till January. They said they don't plan on taking BART again. You know, and it's going to change things.
You're right. Well, any information, Matt, that's available that you can.
Actually, I forgot to mention this. We just did, as part of our Innovate 680 study, a behavioral analysis of residents, and asked them those types of questions, like, what would get you to ride transit again, and what do you think you'll be doing in the future? So we do have some insight from actual county residents, and so I'll work on getting that. The data is just coming out of that. We just did it a couple months ago. Yeah, there's things we can share that are interesting.
Thank you very much. I know it's on everybody's mind. I believe that covers the agenda for tonight. Thank you all for being part of this. All I can say is stay well, keep those masks on. If that's what you want to do, keep them on. And we're kind of adjourned to our next meeting, which is on Wednesday, May 26th of 2021 at 6 p.m. And thank you to the staff, all the staff members who have contributed so much to tonight's, and to Fifi. You helped me out a lot. I really can't thank you enough. And Ed, I presume, will be back at the next meeting. So our meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Haley and Zane.